Rabbanim. Truth is, you've heard a lot already this morning from both the Rosh Hashiva and Rabbi Liron. But I want to say like this, that the grass says when you give a Hesped that there's 2 points to a Hesped. The one is obviously to talk about the person who has passed away and what they achieved in the world. But the other point of a Hesped is actually for every single one of us sitting here today. Is that we need to take and learn from the character traits of that person and try and inculcate those things into our lives, and from that move forward. So I'm going to tell you just a couple of stories of Rav Aharon, and not that I think really highlights the greatness of Rav Aharon. I know everyone's spoken about his greatness in Torah, and he is great in Torah. He's got Sfarim out there on Shas, unbelievable Sfarim on Shas, on topics that a lot of people don't even dare to learn in the Kodshim, in all those areas. And as Rabbi Ranan said, I had the real privilege of sitting in the last daily Gemara share that he gave in the yeshiva. And I remember sitting in his share, and it was an unbelievable experience of that. He brought Torah alive to the world. It was just sitting and having a wow conversation with somebody about Torah. And we learned by Rabbi Kaplan. I remember exactly what we were learning. It was just an unbelievable experience to sit in his share. But more importantly, what I want to talk about is just the man who Rav Lichtenstein was. And I'll never forget, I just want to tell a couple of stories that are told about Rav Lichtenstein. Firstly, in his early years of the yeshiva, they didn't have enough seats when they used to have a public shiur or talk. So they always used to make an announcement, like sometimes we even say to you guys, bring a chair down to the field, to the talk. At least a third of you bring a chair. And the first person taking a couple of chairs was Rav Lichtenstein all the time. He carried a couple of chairs down to the field, because to the share, to the lecture, because he wanted to set that example. And I don't think he did it because, this is how leadership works. I think that was his personality. There's another amazing story about Rav Lichtenstein, which I told this morning, the 7 o'clock minyan, is that when the yeshiva was small, they were learning, and it was a small Beit Midrash, and one Rav was learning, and then he was just a Talmud in the yeshiva, and they were learning Gemara, and his Chavruta, his name was Aharon. And his Chavruta went to the bathroom, so he said, a bit loud, he said, Aharon, when you come back, will you bring me a Masechet Beitza? And 2 seconds later, plonked on his desk, he sees a Masechet Beitza. And he looks up, and there's Rav Lichtenstein bringing the Masechet Beitza. And he's like, Rav Lichtenstein, I don't ask you to bring me. He says, this Aharon, that Aharon, what's the difference? And he, he took out the time to get a Masechet Beitza. He just had this care for every single person. Another amazing story is that somebody lost their screw in the Mavoah, which was like the section just outside the Beit Midrash in the yeshiva, and he lost his screw out there, and the first person on his hands and knees looking for the screw was Rav Lichtenstein. And a personal thing that I always noticed, and something that's really amazing, is that in the Chalarocha, in the dining room, everybody lines up to get food. The only people that don't have to line up to get food are the Rabbanim. The Rabbanim get food delivered to their table, but every single day, without fail, Rav Lichtenstein was in line with a tray and a plate, standing in the queue. And even if the queue was out the door, because when it gets to about 1:05, the queue is way out the door, Rav Lichtenstein was out the door waiting there with a tray in hand, in line like every single other person. It just shows what a real Talmud, what a real giant Torah is. That it's not just about the shiurim, it's not just about being up there in a pedestal and being up there that no one else can reach. He was a normal human being, and led the way just by his example of how he lived his life. I still remember a lot of Motzei Shabbos going for a run after Shabbos, and there I saw Rav Lichtenstein himself carrying out the garbage from his house, putting it in the dustbin, and just those personal examples that we used to see with Rav Lichtenstein that really highlighted it for me, what type of a personality. You really saw that his Torah really peered through him, and really came through him, and he lived the way through that. And I think that's the message that we need to take. His zealousness. A lot of people probably, maybe Rav Shmuley also, Rav Ranan, remember Rav Lichtenstein running in the Beit Midrash, getting Sfarim, and he had Sfarim in his arms. He wouldn't let other people help him carry his books to his shiur. He had to do it himself. He wanted to do it himself, and he had books like piled up, and he was just running to give a shiur. It was just an unbelievable experience to learn in yeshiva. And the last thing I'll say is just for South Africans, and I remember this when I was probably my second year when I got back to Shiva now. At the Sudash Lishit, the final Sudash Lishit of that year's MTA, he got up and he spoke to the South African boys, and he said to the whole yeshiva, he said, I want to tell you that every single person here can learn from South Africans. Because the South Africans come into the yeshiva and they're the lowest level of learning out of any single person that comes into the yeshiva. We're actually very lucky to be allowed to go into Yeshiva Eretz Zion. There are a lot of people on a much higher level of limud than us who aren't accepted to the yeshiva because they always keep a special place for South Africans in the yeshiva. And he says, I think every single person here can learn from the South Africans and the community. He says, because they come in with a low level, but when they leave stronger than anyone else, and their ratzon, their will and desire to learn Torah surpasses anyone else in the yeshiva. And he really had so many wonderful things to say about us. And I think that's what we can learn. We can learn from his midot, especially in this time of Sphira. We can learn from his midot of how he interacts with every single person. And more importantly, making the Torah part of our lives. And he always used to have a phrase of Avodat Hashem, that every single thing in life is about Avodat Hashem, the service of Hashem. And I'll quote one thing from his, from what I heard him say in Adiyah. He says that our whole point of the world is like we say in Bereshit, that Hashem told Adam is Lovdo L'Shomro, to work it and guard it. That's what Adam's job was in the Garden of Eden. And he said that's our job in the world. Our job is a twofold, is to Lovdo L'Shomro, to work it. We're partnered with Hashem to creating this world and developing this world, and we've got to be that partner in developing it. We've also got to L'Shomro, we've also got to guard it. We've got to guard the Torah, guard the mitzvot, and keep it sacred. So please God, may his memory be lived on. May we live the Torah that he educated so many people in this community. And Be'ezrat Hashem, may his neshama get aliyah in Shamayim.